F1 on BBC Radio 5 Sports Extra.
Free practice one for round 17 of the FIA Formula One World Championship, about to get underway at Baku. First time that Formula One has been at Baku in autumn. Normally it's in the earlier or middle part of the year, but it's lovely that all the Formula One teams are ready to go around a very challenging road course with a very, very long straight. My name is Ben Edwards. Joining alongside me, Editor-in-Chief of Autosport, Rebecca Clancy, and also F1 correspondent for BBC Sport, Andrew Benson. And Rebecca, it's great to have you with us this weekend. We're looking forward to Baku getting underway. It's always a bit of a challenging event for us to predict, because so much can go on here. We've had some remarkable results over the years. For example, Ferrari have taken a whole bunch of pole positions here, but they've never managed to take a victory, and Red Bull have taken a bunch of victories, but they've never taken a pole position. It's a funny place, isn't it?
It's a very strange place, isn't it? Yeah, thank you for having me. This is one of those circuits where there are so many stories. It's the time that Sebastian Vettel drove into the side of Lewis Hamilton, the Red Bulls colliding, the magic button for Lewis Hamilton. There are so many incidents around this track. It is very unique, as you say. It's a road course. It has the very long straights, and then it goes through the old town. It's very tight and twisty, so it's a very demanding track for the drivers, and we do have a lot of incidents. The tyre blowouts that were blamed on Pirelli, and then there was the toing and froing, and obviously the big crash that Lance Stroll had with that. So yes, I think we will see plenty of incidents this weekend.
Indeed. Well, Andrew Benson with us as well, as I just said, F1 correspondent for BBC Sports. And Andrew, it's quite funny being at a track where Sergio Perez has actually had more wins than anybody else, hasn't he? He's had 2 wins here. Everyone else has had single victories here.
You know what they say, lies, damned lies and statistics, Ben. It's like it is a funny one, that. Yeah, he gels with street circuits. Max Verstappen, paradoxically, doesn't like street circuits because they're normally the sort of places where, you know, people say that driver talent comes to the fore, which is what happens with Charles Leclerc around here. He's had 3 poles in a row here. How he put the 2021 Ferrari on pole, I've got no idea, but he did. He's my favourite for pole, and maybe even the win this weekend, but I think it should be a really competitive weekend. McLaren are quick everywhere these days. Mercedes have changed their car back to a previous spec because they've been struggling in the last couple of races, and Red Bull, well, who knows what sort of form they're going to show. They're all over the place at the moment, admitting to be lost, and I don't think I've seen in 18 years Red Bull look in. I mean, okay, the car's still pretty quick, but the idea that they actually lost and don't know what to do, I don't think I've ever seen that from them before.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see how Red Bull gets on this weekend. Are they going to get it back together, or are they going to struggle? Track temperature 43 degrees, air temperature just under 30 degrees, so it's pretty warm. There's a little bit of cloud around, but not too windy. It can be quite breezy here in Baku at times, but just now, as we're looking at some lovely views around the track, the trees are actually not blowing around too much at the moment, so hopefully the cars will be relatively stable. But that long straight that we have down towards the first corner is always very interesting, and straight line speed here is a key part of it, and yet when they go up the historic part of the track, it gets very tight and twisty, and we can often see mistakes here. So we will enjoy seeing first practice coming up in just a few moments, second practice later on today. Then there are no sprint events this weekend. It is a straightforward Grand Prix session with free practice on Saturday morning, and then qualifying, and then the race, of course, on Sunday. And the opportunity for Lando Norris to try and close up the gap in the championship as well, to try and catch Max Verstappen a little bit more. And we have a couple of drivers who are having some very early experiences. And in fact, one of them, of course, is Oliver Behrman. And Oliver did a fantastic job standing in for Carlos Sainz earlier this year when Carlos suddenly wasn't able to race and he got a late call. This is actually going to be the first Grand Prix that he's done where he does FP1, FP2, FP3, qualifying and the race, of course, assuming he doesn't crash out in the meantime. And it's at Baku, where he's actually got a good history in Formula 2 as well. So he's driving for Haas this weekend, and we know he's going to be competing for them all of next year.
Yes, it's a very exciting outing for the young Englishman. He is obviously, as you say, he's in for Haas, replacing the banned Kevin Magnussen, who hit his 12 penalty points, so automatic race ban for him. He is a very bright talent. It's great to see that he's getting that drive, and there was a bit of a feeling, wasn't there, at the start of the year that we didn't have any new rookies coming in. We weren't really sure where the new talent was coming from, but now we've got Behrman will be in the seat. We've got obviously Colapinto in for the rest of the year. Antonelli's coming in for Mercedes, so it's actually quite an exciting time for these rookies coming through.
Absolutely right, yes. Franco Colapinto for Williams for his second outing, having done Monza, and he's never been to Baku before. So Oliver Behrmann, as I mentioned, has actually had an amazing Formula 2 event here last year with 2 victories, even with a reverse grid. He did say, however, he was chatting into the press conference yesterday that he did make contact with the wall, and he was a little bit lucky. He actually damaged the suspension, but still went on to take pole position. So that was a bit of a bizarre one. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see how he gets on, and of course incorporating with the Haas team when he's got the full season ahead next year. This is a lovely opportunity. I'm going to miss seeing Kevin Magnussen out. Just to remind everybody, he is standing in for Kevin, who of course got the extra penalty last time out and can't compete this weekend.
It's a great outing for him, isn't it? Get his eye in before he has the full season next year. It's great that Haas have done this. Obviously they would rather have had Kevin Magnussen, who, as you say, was banned. They'd rather that didn't happen, but Haas aren't fighting for the championship or anything like that. So we've said this is it can be, parts of the track are very technical, very challenging for the driver. So it's a great experience that you just can't get because we don't have testing out of season or even in season really now. Obviously we have the rules around rookies getting a drive in the pre-practice sessions, but otherwise you would not have so much time in an F1 car before you actually get to drive it. So this is actually really valuable for Haas and for Behrmann.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we shall see how Oliver Behrmann gets on in the Formula 1 car. He did say in the press conference yesterday that he's going to be a little bit more cautious perhaps than he would have been in a Formula 2 car. And it's quite a big step in a way that they were talking about. Very interesting, of course, that when you're in Formula 2, you don't get the free practice sessions. You're basically, you're pretty much thrown into qualifying and into the race. You've got to go for it from the word go. Here in Formula 1, of course, especially without a sprint event taking place, they've got plenty of time to get the feel for the car, get the feel for the track, and Baku is not the easiest place. Let's just listen to Piastri.
Track has very, very low grip. Copy that.
Yeah, that's a useful little bit of feedback from Oscar Piastri to his team, that the track is feeling very low grip. Not really surprising. Of course, there's no rubber down yet, is there?
No, street track. This is definitely going to evolve as the weekend goes on. But just to your point about he has got these 3 practice sessions, an hour each. The important thing is not to rush getting your eye in. We saw it last time out in Monza with Antonelli in FP1, pushing just a bit too hard and crashed very early on into the session, like 2 or 3 laps in. And then we had Colapinto, who obviously has 9 races to get his eye in, and so a slightly different situation, but far more cautious. Took his time. Was a very solid outing for Colapinto last time out, and I think Behrmann will, if they'll have had the chat beforehand, just don't put it into the wall, take your time, you've got the whole weekend, it's just FP1, don't bin the car.
Absolutely right. So early stages, Andrew, we're already seeing a little bit of action going on track as people are trying to find a bit of clear space.
That's right, yeah, and it's a very easy track to crash on, this one. It's low grip, as we just heard Oscar Piastri say. The walls are close, lots of right-angled corners, Ben. You'll know as a former racing driver, it's short duration corners. You've got to kind of chuck the car in, aim it for a needle point, if you like, and if you make a mistake, it's easy to hit the wall on the outside or on the inside sometimes. Long straight, you've got to get the braking points right. One of the weirdest stats about this track is that there's the straight between turns 2 and 3, which looks short in comparison with the long straight, is actually as long as the pit straight in Hungary. That just goes to show how much sort of straights and right angle corners this track is. So Behrmann, yes, he'll be very careful. We're riding on board with him right now, not to make those mistakes too early on. Here's Norris's radio.
It's super easy to turn right and harder to turn left. It doesn't feel
so Norris talking there about an imbalance in the steering, heavier one way than the other, and I think that's the 3rd time this year I've heard him say that on the radio in the first practice session. There must be something about the way McLaren set up their steering that makes it prone to this kind of offset, which they must have to fix when he comes back after his first run. I don't know why it is. It's obviously not that important. But interesting that it keeps happening to them.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. Power steering, of course, nowadays in Formula 1, that is part and parcel of it, but the setup of the suspension and all sorts, the way the chassis is set up, maybe has a slight effect on the different steering feel one way and the other. We are watching Oliver Behrman, the 19-year-old from Chelmsford in the UK, out in the Haas at the moment, and as he has told us, he's got the experience here in Formula 2, but he wants to just gradually pick it up in the Haas Formula 1 car as he's got the time to do that, and we shall see what he can do. Remember, he scored points in his debut in Formula 1 when he drove for Ferrari, that one race that he did in place of Carlos Sainz in Saudi earlier this year, and so he is actually 12th in the current championship on 6 points. Whether he's going to be able to score points in his second outing for a second team, I don't think that's ever happened before, so it's going to be fun to see, but harder to do it in a Haas.
Yeah, and we were talking about taking it easy. The message doesn't seem to have got to Charles Leclerc at the moment. He's already 3/10 quicker than Sergio Perez, and on a quicker lap already. I can see him going purple on the timing screens. It's still very early in the session though, so I'm watching this, watching Behrman as he goes around the track. We can see what Piastri was talking about. The car's sliding a lot, Ben, isn't it? Even when he's going still relatively slowly, you can see the rear twitching out of corners, and it does look very difficult out there in Baku at the moment. There's Colapinto coming out of the last corner onto the long straight. He's having a little wobble at the rear as well.
Yeah, so Franco Colapinto is the other youngster having very early experience in Formula 1, 21-year-old from Argentina, and he was saying yesterday how much passion there is in Argentina for motor racing, and it's rather lovely to be a part of that. Ricciardo has just gone second fastest to Leclerc. It is very early days in this first practice session, however, as we've heard, the track is very, very slippery. But Colapinto, yeah, just picking it up, he has not been to Baku before, never driven here. He's not done an awful lot of street tracks, so there is a lot to learn. He's done a lot of simulator work, and of course that is part and parcel now of younger drivers coming up through the ranks, is that simulator work gives them a real opportunity to get to learn a circuit before they actually get out there. But then once you're in the car and you're bouncing around, it's a rather different feel.
Yeah, I mean, and it also depends on how good your simulator is as well. As I said, they don't have testing, so they can't go out and... I am personally grateful that they have reduced the amount of practice that we get over a weekend. They used to be 90-minute sessions on a Friday, and now they're only an hour each. That's great. It does add into the mix of the unknown, I suppose. Yes, but they very heavily rely on the simulator. And you mentioned he's Argentinian. There is a huge amount of support for him. It is amazing, and he's actually brought in a lot of sponsors with him as well, just because of the demand for motor racing in Argentina. And I, for one, am personally up for going back to Buenos Aires.
Ben and I went to the Buenos Aires Grand Prix a few times, and it was one of my favourite races. Buenos Aires is an absolutely lovely city.
It's probably my favourite city in the world. I adore it.
It wasn't the best racetrack when it came back in the 90s, Ben, was it? They'd sort of chopped off the top half of it, and it used to be great in the 70s. But still a really great place to go for a Grand Prix, and I'm with you, Beck. I'd love to go back to Buenos Aires for a Grand Prix.
Yeah, and there really is genuine enthusiasm in motorsport there. We've seen that ourselves. Been to another pretty amazing place in Argentina as well, and so yeah, they will love seeing Franco Colapinto out there. Hamilton has just gone fastest now, interestingly, in the Mercedes. That's a pretty quick lap he's just done, but the track is getting quicker and quicker all the time. More cars out there, more rubber going down. It's Hamilton, Leclerc, Verstappen. That's quite an interesting top three, and Alonso fourth actually at the moment. So yeah, top order at the moment up front with some of the most experienced drivers in Formula 1. Whether that's going to change as we go beyond this session. Just having a little look at the replay. Oh yeah, a tiny little bit of something being flapped around, but I don't think that was a major part of the car. And a big slide, one of the Saubers, yeah, Bottas just going deep down into turn one. Bottas is a former winner here when he was driving for Mercedes. One of the few people who's actually won from pole position. It hasn't been done too often here, but Valtteri has done it in the past. He's just gone a bit deep, decided not to try and take turn one corner. There's plenty of space to turn around, come back on and not get any damage. Not everybody gets that right, but Valtteri Bottas did that very cleanly. Still very early stages of first practice here in Baku. Hamilton currently fastest from Piastri, now up to second. Leclerc third, Verstappen fourth, Alonso fifth. Then it's Daniel Ricciardo in sixth place, ahead of Carlos Sainz. Sergio Perez, who, as we say, has got good experience here, and he's just actually popped up to sixth.
It's very hot. Okay, copy.
Lewis Hamilton reporting his seat is a bit hot.
So that was happening to the Mercedes drivers in Monza a lot. They never really gave us a definitive... Excuse me, I'm getting my words all jumbled up. They never really gave us a definitive answer as to what was causing it. It could be the electrical components. A lot of them are packed around the seat for weight distribution reasons. They can get hot in a Formula 1 car. But also, on a track with long straights, you often find, Ben, that the car hits the ground on the straight a lot, and that heats up the bodywork under the driver and basically toasts his bottom. So it could be either of those two things, or maybe even a combination of the two. Hamilton was asked yesterday whether Mercedes had found a cure for that, and he said, well, I talked about it in Monza, but I haven't addressed it since, and I'm sure the team will have looked at it. But for it to be happening after, what's he done, 4 laps so far this morning? Yeah, he won't be looking forward to the rest of the weekend as a consequence of that, at least in terms of getting a toasty bottom. Here's Piastri's radio.
The bottoming level is quite high. For the high speed, it's not exactly straightforward.
Understood.
Yeah, well, that's good feedback from Piastri. Meanwhile, we're listening in to the sound on board with Lando Norris as he's going up through the rather tighter top section at the moment before it starts to plunge downhill. Quick kick left and then a sharper left. And Beck, this is a corner that we've often seen drivers hitting the tyre wall on the outside, particularly when we're into the race itself or in qualifying, but all clean for Lando Norris at the moment.
Yeah, but when they're racing and fighting pretty hard, as Andrew was saying earlier, there isn't much room here. The walls are very close to the track, and you do often see a few incidents on that corner, and I'd be amazed if we didn't see it again this weekend.
It's probably the most difficult corner on the track. Here's Stroll's radio.
This is not a car. This is not a car right now.
It's Lance Stroll complaining. It's downhill. You approach that corner, turn 15, through the sort of one of the fastest sections of the track. You come through the castle section and accelerating through 3 flat-out kinks, and they're braking downhill, and the corner's downhill as well. Verstappen's just gone slightly quicker than Leclerc at the head of the field there. That's the noise you can hear in the background, his engine. So it's really tricky to judge your braking point right into that corner, and that's why people often make a mistake. There is an escape road there, but you often see drivers bail out into the escape road if they realise it's going wrong early enough in the corner. But if you don't get that call exactly right, then it's very easy to take your front suspension off on the outside wall.
Hamilton's just gone through that corner you're talking about, turn 15. His first sector faster than anybody, second sector down a fraction. He's going to be very similar lap time here. Let's just see how the last part of the lap goes here. Verstappen has gone top, 1:47.214. Let's just see what Hamilton does. He's got a few seconds to come. Oh, we've got a red flag. I think the session has being stopped. Let's just see what he does. Yeah, red flag is out. The lap he does, across the line he goes, not quite so quick in the end. Whether he actually started to ease off, I don't know, but we do have the red flag. This session is being halted for the moment.
I think he must have eased off there, Ben, because we saw the red flag sign flash on the timing screens, didn't we, before he got to the finish line, and he would have had that on his dashboard. We don't know what's caused this red flag at the moment, though. I would imagine it's either debris or someone's had an accident, but the television cameras haven't picked it up yet.
No, that's right. So we don't know exactly the reason for this red flag just yet, but everybody will be heading slowly back into the pits at this point, having seen the red flag, red lights out on track as well. So everybody has backed off. Verstappen currently fastest from Leclerc, Hamilton, but they looked as though Hamilton was going to do a very, very similar time, as you say. He backed off just towards the end. We're looking at a replay of Charles Leclerc down into turn 16, gets wide. No, he just runs over the curve. That's pretty standard. We see that quite often on that exit, and it's not ideal because he gets onto a very dusty outer section, and he wouldn't have had the grip that he wanted, but no damage done. Max Verstappen coasting as he now is heading back towards the pits as well. But yeah, we still haven't had a reason just yet as to why this red flag has come out. Max Verstappen, recent races, not with a victory, of course, which is quite interesting. Looking back over the last 5 races, he's had a couple of second places, but no wins, despite that dominant part of the early season. But right now it does look as though he's got good competitive pace here. And we were wondering whether the Red Bull would be a little bit stronger here at Baku, as we have seen it in the past. He is a former winner of this track. Another one where he could have won it, but he had a tyre failure in the last few laps of the race, which cost him another victory here. And he had to chase down his teammate last year. But in the end, it was 1-2 for Perez and him for Red Bull. So he's back into the pits. Everybody coming back into the pits while we get a little bit of a pause here, Andrew, on this session. Russell?
I've got something in my left elbow aggravating me. If we could just take a look.
Hey, Phil.
So it looks like it's some problem with the track, Ben, because all the drivers, they're either back in the pits now or they're still on their way back to the pits. Just Fernando Alonso, Franco Colapinto and Lewis Hamilton are the only drivers not back in the pits just yet. But those three still appear to be moving according to the timing screen. So there must be some issue with the track that the race control have discovered. I don't know what, though. Now, you may remember a few years ago there was a problem with loose drain covers here. George Russell hit one when he was still driving for Williams and basically destroyed the car, and that ended that session. I don't know whether it's something like that, but that's the sort of thing that can happen on a street circuit. What's odd is that we're not getting any TV pictures, nor are we getting any kind of communication from the FIA, whether it be on the messaging chat that Beck and I have from them, or on the timing screen. So we're a bit befuddled at the moment.
Do you remember that George Russell recovery? And the recovery truck drove into the bridge.
Yes,
we've got a replay here, guys. Let's just have a little look. Is this something to do with the red debris out on track?
We're on TV.
Maybe it's just debris. A little bit of metal. What's this that we're looking at? Yeah, so it just looks like there's some debris out there. So maybe that's the reason for the red flag. It's not a huge amount of debris, but it doesn't look as though we've lost a manhole cover again, like, as you say, with George Russell. That was in 2019, and that did a fair bit of damage to the chassis as well at that point. So no cars that we've seen have been damaged in any way, but maybe it was just the safety that mattered. And hopefully, track clear, and session will resume in just a few moments' time. So we'll be back to running in less than a minute now, and all the cars will be able to go back out. We're just looking down in the pits at the moment. Sergio Perez with his 2 victories, 5 podiums at this circuit in the past, even though he's had a pretty tough season in recent times, not really delivering the sort of performances one would expect. He's down in 7th place in the championship now, more than 20 points behind Lewis Hamilton, who's currently in 6th place. So Perez really needs to come back to Baku with all the great history that he's got at this track and try and get something special again, like he had last year. That was, of course, his last win in Formula One was being in Baku, even though it was earlier in the season last year. As I mentioned, it's the first time that they've run Baku in autumn, and there's been a bit of a shift of putting tracks, different races in different parts of the year, trying to make the travel side of things a little bit more understandable, but it can still be a bit of a challenge, can't it?
It's supposed to be more sustainable, this calendar, isn't it? Apart from you went to Australia, you came back for a week, you went to China, you came back for a week, you went to Japan and came back for a week. It doesn't feel particularly sustainable at the moment, and particularly 20 races is quite brutal for everybody involved.
It certainly is. They've got 2 in a row over this weekend and next weekend, of course, going from Baku to Singapore. Then they have a bit of a break, probably more of a break than they kind of imagined, with 3 weekends off. And then they've got 2 big groups, 2 triple header groups, basically leading into the end of the year, where it's going to be a feisty time, particularly if the championship's still up for grabs, which at the moment we know, with the strength of McLaren and the fact that Oscar Piastri is very likely to help Lando Norris in the remaining part of this season, there is a threat for Max Verstappen, and there's certainly a threat in the Constructors' Championship for Red Bull.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's McLaren's Constructors' Championship now, really. 8 points behind. Yep. They have all the momentum. They have 2 good drivers versus Red Bull, who are in a bit of a quandary at the moment, and they definitely only have 1 driver, Perez, not performing at all. And we know Singapore is a moment for him again in his career, having just been given a new contract at the start of June. And then all the rumours, would he last through the summer break? And now it's Singapore. It looks like another moment that he'll be assessed again. So, but yes, I do think it's 62 points for Norris to Verstappen, so it works out about 8 points a race that he has to take out of Verstappen. But given that's what he's done for the last 2 races, and now that McLaren have thrown their weight behind Norris, as Andrew Benson exclusively revealed on BBC Sport website, they've sorted. There you go, give credit where credit's due. They have sorted that out. Personally, I think it probably is. They should have done it 3 races ago. It's easy for them. Well, not easy for them to say. I understand them saying that it wasn't straightforward. It wasn't a simple decision. I admire the fact that McLaren do let their drivers race. They have this incredible lineup between Piastri and Norris. They have given away a lot of points for Norris, though. He could have been in an even stronger position. They should have swapped the drivers in Monza. It was only for 2nd and 3rd. I'm not sure Piastri would have minded too much. Hungary, okay, that was for Piastri's first ever race win, so I understand that a bit more. But it's good. At least they've done it now. They've made that decision, and that is what is crucial, because it is only 62 points. And the way Red Bull are going and the way McLaren are going, they are diverging from each other. So you can see McLaren picking up both championships. And if they hadn't backed Norris, I think one of the problems they would have had is that Ferrari are only 39 points behind Red Bull. And they, Charles Leclerc won last time out. He's looking very strong. He's currently second in FP1 at the moment, although I never read too much into the times here. But Ferrari have two great drivers as well, which Red Bull, as I've said, don't have. So if McLaren hadn't got their house in order, and we saw in Monza, allowing them to race is actually what then ended up giving Leclerc that win, because that fantastic move that Piastri pulled off on Norris in turn 4 around Monza was amazing. But actually, them fighting, if Norris had been leading at the end of lap 1, they probably would have gone on to get the 1-2. And before you know it, they carry on doing that. Ferrari is sneaking up behind. So it is absolutely the right decision, and credit, because at least they've now finally made that decision.
Yeah, I agree. Andrew, I mean, you've been talking about this. We're actually riding on board with Charles Leclerc right now. And I know when I was talking to you earlier, you feel that Charles, having won at Monza, he's got a good chance here as well. We know he's had these 3 pole positions in a row at this track without taking a victory. But he could still be a major contender here. He's
absolutely brilliant around this track, and absolutely brilliant. It's just astonishing how fast he is around Baku. He always has been. He had a Formula 2 weekend as well, in which he destroyed the field. That's not the same thing in Formula 1, obviously, but still.
But that was like 3 days after his dad dies as well.
Exactly.
It was quite an incredible weekend.
Yeah, and he's just like he's terrific at Monaco, and so, yeah, that's why he's my favourite for this weekend. Here's Ocon's radio.
I got a problem. I have no power.
There's a problem with the Renault engine, unsurprisingly. Perhaps, and it's about time, people say, he's never had a win here. He's had all these poles, he's never had a win. But that was the same case in Monaco, and he managed to pull that off this year. So let's see. What's interesting about this year, or what has become interesting about this year, is how variable it is. The last 6 or 7 races, there's been pretty much different winners at almost every one of them, apart from Hamilton winning 2, Silverstone and Spa. That noise you can hear in the background is Ocon crawling back to the pits with his damaged engine. So it's really hard to say who's going to be competitive, but I think he's my favourite for pole, Leclerc, and I think he will be again in Singapore, because the Ferrari, something about the way the Ferrari works on street circuits that seems to favour it. I won't go into the theoretical technicalities of that just yet, but it could easily be Norris, or it could easily be Hamilton, or it could easily be Verstappen. Verstappen's actually started this weekend looking really strong.
Yeah.
And he's just done another lap that's put him 6/10 quicker than anybody else.
But isn't it fun that it's so unpredictable now?
Exactly, yeah.
Because the early part of this season, and last year was even more predictable, of course, but this early part of the season was predictable. Now it's really proving to be very unpredictable, which is good fun. So Ocon has managed to make it back into the pits. We're just having a look at a replay of Ocon. Listening. We've got Sainz just having pulled off as well. He looks like he's had a little bit of a moment, but hopefully without hitting anything. Yeah, he's just gone straight down, but has managed to avoid hitting the barrier, so that's good news. It's going into the tight one at turn 7, but Ocon has at least made it back to the pits, and Leclerc's on a better lap again. He's just set fastest pace in first and second sectors. We're riding on board with Charles Leclerc. He's coming down this long straight in Baku, where the tyre temperatures actually cool off quite a lot before they get down towards the first corner. It's always a bit of an issue. Yeah, he does go quickest by quarter of a second, 0.250 exactly, as he does a 1:46.608. He is the fastest here in both qualifying and in the race, so we will see if he's going to be able to maintain those performances that he has achieved here. His pole position last time was a 1:40.203, so we're a little way off that just yet, but the conditions are not ideal. We're just having a look at Carlos Sainz, what he got wrong down into turn 7. Just braked a bit late, didn't actually lock up very much, and stopped in plenty of time before he hit a barrier. Just locked the left front a little bit, tried to ease off the brake so he didn't flat spot the tyre too much, knew he had space and came to a halt. But he has always been out-qualified here in Baku. It's not been Carlos's favourite place. Little replay on board with Charles Leclerc. Is there a touch? Not really, I think. Maybe just a little closer to the barrier, but nothing too serious. Nice little slide, but did he touch? just a tiny little touch against the wall, but really it was nothing serious at all as he was coming out of turn 4. So we've still got just 35 minutes to go in this first practice session. Leclerc's taken that top spot once again, but as we were saying, this is all going to be extremely unpredictable. I think one of the ones that's less unpredictable we're watching right now, Andrew, is Zhou Guanyu. The Saubers have really been struggling this year, and we haven't seen anywhere where they've done anything a little stronger, have we?
No, and that's led to ructions at that team. Obviously, that's going to become Audi in 2026, and they basically sacked the two bosses last month and replaced them with a new dual management team, although effectively Mattia Binotto, the former Ferrari team boss, is in charge as Chief Technical Officer and Chief Operating Officer. But it's going to have Jonathan Wheatley, who's currently the Red Bull Sporting Director, move over there sometime next year and become team principal at the races. On Leclerc, I did an interview with him earlier this year, actually, in which I asked him about why he thought he was so quick in qualifying. And I said, do you think you take more risks than other people maybe on those those key qualifying laps at the end of Q3? And I thought he would say yes, but he said no, I don't think I do. He says he explained it as being more to do with intuition, he believed. He said, I feel things very, very quickly. That's what I would say is a strength of mine. On street tracks, I think that sometimes I take a bit more risk than others. I don't know. But sometimes, he said, and this was the interesting bit, being a tiny bit underneath the limit is faster than being on the limit. Because on the limit, you're opening the balance, you get snaps, and you lose a lot of time. So it's the balance between knowing which corners you can push flat out and extracting the absolute maximum, and other corners where you actually have to take it to 95%, and and that's faster. And that, knowing, he said, how to do that, where exactly that line is, he thinks he says he can feel that very, very quickly, and maybe in the sort of low grip environment of a street circuit, if he's right about his own self-assessment there, and why wouldn't he be, maybe on a street circuit that skill, that intuition is enhanced. I don't know what you think, Ben.
No, it's a very good point, and I think he has a natural ability on the street circuits, as you say. I mean, we know what he did at Monaco earlier this year. We've seen him in the past on street tracks doing a fantastic job. In a way, like Sergio Perez, as we're actually looking at right now, Perez's strength is definitely on street tracks. He currently is a bit further down the list. He's down at 15th. Mind you, Verstappen has just gone with, off has gone Leclerc. Just as we've been talking about, he's damaged the front suspension. Charles Leclerc has whacked the barrier. He's been fastest. It's a red flag again here in first practice. And the man who's been setting great pace, who has just been closed up by Max Verstappen by 300ths of a second, and sadly Charles Leclerc, he's okay, he's getting out of the car, but he has damaged the front end, and you can see the frustration in himself a little bit. It is only free practice 1, but Beck, this is not ideal for him when he's been building up the pace gradually through this session.
No, I think we can blame Andrew Benson for that one. Was that commentator's curse? Yeah, that is a fair amount of damage to that Ferrari, isn't it? You can see the frustration from Leclerc as he got out of that car, ripping off his gloves, just so disappointed with it, but pushing too hard, didn't know when to go to 95%.
Exactly, and is it turn 15? Is that the one we were talking about, that he's gone off? I think it is. I'm not absolutely sure, but it looks like it at the moment. It's right at the end of sector 2 where his little coloured blobs that we get on the timing screens have stopped. And we have only had an overhead shot so far, but I think it is that corner. Here we are. Here's a replay, Ben.
Yeah, let's have a look. Yeah, you're right. I think it is going to be down into turn 15, the one we've been talking about. Oh, bosh! That was a big hit, actually. He was nowhere near it. He braked too late, basically. He hardly got any turn in. That was a surprise. That he went in that quickly. Unusual for him to make an error quite like that so early on. He actually had to lock up, just wait to hit the barrier, and he hit it pretty hard. Let's listen to him.
I took the dirt on the outside. Okay, no worries.
Yeah, that does make sense. I wondered why it had locked up so much. He says he took the dirt, so the tyres had got dirty, got gravel or grip on them, and lost grip basically, and under braking he just didn't have the grip. So the right front is really smashed completely out of shape, and it's going to take a little while. They're going to have to pick this up and move it. They can take these cars out of the way just behind turn 15, get it out of the way, and they will be able to get the session underway once more. But that's disappointing. He'd done some fastest sectors. I noticed, though, straight line speed is looking very good for the Red Bulls. Both Perez and Max Verstappen are showing the highest speeds at the moment, so they are in good shape here.
Yeah, now, he's had a crash. Obviously, that's not great. But if he's going to have a crash, and he does like a crash sometimes, Charles Leclerc, doesn't he?
He's crashed here before.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so stupid, wasn't it? He says famously on the radio when he crashed in qualifying. That's about the least bad time of the weekend to have a crash. He's had some decent laps already in first practice. As long as he doesn't do it again in second practice, he should be fine. The car doesn't look too badly damaged. It looks like a front corner and a front wing, really. That Ferrari should be able to repair that relatively easily between the two sessions. So as long as he doesn't do it again, I think it's probably not going to harm him too much. He's missed the. What will happen in the rest of this session is that most of the drivers will go out and do a slightly quicker lap, and then there'll be a bit of race simulation running at the end. He's missed out on that, but it's only half an hour, so it shouldn't harm him too much, I don't think.
Well, we shall see. Beck Clancy with us as well, editor-in-chief of Autosport. Beck, just thinking about Red Bull a little bit. I mean, there's been a lot of writing about Red Bull this year. There were the controversies in the early part of the year with Christian Horner, which has all gone a bit quieter. Max Verstappen started the season off very, very well, but has had this bit of a dip. But what we're seeing today in this free practice session, Verstappen has been looking pretty competitive, hasn't he, so far? And Red Bull, I wonder, are they going to suddenly start coming back a bit more strongly than we have seen in recent times?
It's definitely been a blip, hasn't it, this year for them, the last 5 races. So I don't fully buy into this, that they have completely fallen away and that they're not still going to be competitive. They still have Max Verstappen, who is an astonishingly good driver. They do have some problems with their cars. Andrew mentioned it earlier, in the 18 years, I've never really known them as a team to bring upgrades, which turn out to be downgrades. They definitely don't understand the floor in the way that they would like. I think you can't really argue about the timing of it all, with Adrian Newey departing and them not really being able to solve their issues with the development of the car. Normally he would come in and he'd get his pencil and paper, as he likes to work, and he'd work out the problems and it would all be resolved now. And that isn't happening. But we can't get too carried away that they're saying that they're falling away completely and going in completely the wrong direction, because Max Verstappen was on pole in Spa and he was quick, very quick, and
he had a penalty, so he did
have the penalty, so he had to start further back.
But that wasn't his fault.
Not his fault at all. And he does look very quick here. He's been pushing very hard. They are a team of winners who know how to win, and there's a lot of arguments over at Lua, looking at the McLaren now, Piastri, that McLaren have struggled with their success because they don't really, well, one, it crept up on them and they weren't really expecting to be in the position that they're in, and they also don't have a team of winners who have the experience of winning, I should say, unlike Red Bull, who have had everything thrown at them in the last 18 years and have had success, and then they've fallen away and then they've had success again. And that team has been mostly stable and is full of very, very experienced people who know how to get that car back to the front. So I don't fully buy into the fact that Red Bull are going to completely collapse, but I do also think that the championship is alive and well, and the fight for it will go down to the wire, or perhaps that's just more wishful thinking. But yes, I think one of the big problems they have is Perez, to be honest, that they just only have one driver. That is going to cost them the constructors. As I mentioned about Singapore already, we had Williams calling up Colapinto, but we know that they had a conversation with Liam Lawson, with Red Bull, about Liam Lawson, but Red Bull didn't want to let Liam Lawson go just in case they still need to put him in a car before the end of the season. They don't know, does Perez need replacing? Is Lawson the right option? We know he's not very experienced. Do they promote someone from RB? So there's a lot of moving parts within that Red Bull stable. But yeah, I mean, Max Verstappen's currently second, isn't he? And he's looking pretty quick. He
is looking quite competitive. Perez is still a long way down the list. He's down to 15th. I noticed going out on a set of soft tyres. The session is about to get going again in just under a minute. Let's just run you through the times at the moment. So it's Charles Leclerc fastest currently, from Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, and then George Russell. Lewis Hamilton currently 5th fastest from Yuki Tsunoda. Then Daniel Ricciardo is 7th, Carlos Sainz 8th, Oscar Piastri 9th, and Nico Hülkenberg doing a good job in the Haas. But mind you, Oliver Behrman, his teammate, is only just behind him. So that's quite interesting that the two Haas drivers are actually quite similarly timed there. That's good to know. Franco Colapinto is actually a fraction faster than Alex Albon at the moment. They're running 12th and 13th. And then we've got Fernando Alonso a long way down in 14th place ahead of Sergio Perez. Valtteri Bottas, not so surprisingly, down in 16th place. Pierre Gasly, he's down in 17th ahead of Lance Stroll, Zhou Guanyu, and then Esteban Ocon, who's had that problem, had to come into the pits. So he is last on the list at the moment. Just seen a little bit of a Nico Hülkenberg trying to push his way out of into the pits, but I think that's been able to be sorted out. It was just coming out in front of Colapinto, actually. But Colapinto has kept his position as they come down to the end of the pit lane, and we will see how this all goes as they're all getting ready to come back out on circuit. Here we go, and so we are into the final 25 minutes now. Practice start by the looks of things for Hülkenberg, which he can do. He's allowed to do that down at the end of the finish line. We've got a few cars going out on the soft tyres now, so this might show us a few more individuals going faster as we go into this latter stage. Ollie Behrman, as I mentioned, doing a pretty good job. He's just coming out of the Haas pits right now as well. So sitting currently in 11th place, right behind his own teammate Nico Hülkenberg. The gap between them about 0.2 of a second. Pretty impressive that he's already doing that, saying that he would start fairly cautiously. But as we saw earlier on, he was pushing hard, and lovely to see. So Alonso and Stroll, they're a long way down. Aston Martin are struggling a bit at the moment, aren't they? And I wondered whether we would see a bit more, because Alonso's had some good results here in the past, but they're well down at the moment. This may not mean anything. It may just be the timing of everybody, but it's something to keep an eye on.
It must be a fascinating time to be in the Aston Martin factory right now. I mean, what a week they've had. The false dawn of last year, I think you could probably call it, with that great start for Fernando Alonso, all those podiums surprising us all, delighting us all, to be honest. But we haven't seen anything like that again this season. The whole season really has been pretty disappointing for them. I mean, they're 9th and 10th in the championship at the moment. 50 points for Alonso, just 24 for Lance Stroll. Quite frankly, they are now looking ahead to 2026. That is pretty much their priority, with the signing of Adrian Newey and all the fanfare that we experienced earlier this week as he joins as managing technical partner, which is an awful job title.
No, but it is fascinating, as you said, and Fernando Alonso was talking about the fact that Newey will be joining the team. Of course, for Alonso, as he's going into the latter stages of his career, he does sort of wonder, how much will Adrian Newey give him the opportunity to have a fully rapid car for the remainder of his Formula One career. But Alonso doesn't want to go anywhere just yet. We're riding on board with Franco Colapinto, by the way, at the moment. But Andrew, just talking about Fernando Alonso and the relationship developing with Adrian Newey is quite a fun one, isn't it?
Yeah, he was saying yesterday it might be too late for him in his career. He says he's not lost anything with age. Who knows whether that's right or not. I know my colleague Ms. Clancy is sceptical of that.
He's 43.
I know.
Your reaction times, everything starts to fade, even if it's microscopic in a sport that is judged on thousandths of a second. It surely has an impact.
I don't know. I'm hoping to do an interview with him at some point this year, which I will raise that topic with Fernando. But anyway, I think whether he has or hasn't, the point is that his contract runs to the end of 2026. By which time he will be 45. Now, okay, Juan Manuel Fangio won the championship, his last championship, when he was 46, but that was an awfully long time ago. And it's not just about Alonso, obviously, it's the people around him, the team. Will they want to give him a new contract at the end of that year, even if he does appear to be still performing at the same level? Because that team has suddenly, with the signing of Adrian Newey, become possibly the team that most drivers will want to go to. It's not an absolute cast iron guarantee of success signing Newey, but it's about as close as it gets. And obviously, if you pay someone up to £30 million a year, which is what Adrian Newey's deal is, according to a very good source of mine, then you expect success. And so, Verstappen, people have been talking about him going to Mercedes back at the end of next year, which I thought was pretty likely. Is that as likely as it was now that Newey's gone to Aston Martin?
Doesn't feel like it, does it?
Exactly. George Russell, who, if Verstappen does go to Mercedes, is the one who's looking most shaky because they've signed Antonelli and he's only 18. Are they going to ditch him after a year? Unless he's rubbish, probably not. So Russell will be looking for somewhere to go if he doesn't stay at Mercedes. He'll be looking at Aston Martin as an option. All the best drivers will be looking at that seat, and so it's really spiced things up off track as well as on.
Soft tyres are making a big difference, and Hulkenberg just went fourth, but he's just been beaten by his new teammate Oliver Behrmann, who's gone fifth, because there's actually others moving up. Perez has now gone quickest on a set of soft tyres, so we are seeing much quicker times now on the soft compound tyres. No surprising, we're on the full soft section of Pirelli tyres here this weekend, but we've had that here in Baku in the past. Because most of the corners are relatively slow. Piastri now goes quickest on a set of softs, so we are seeing a lot of changes. But what Oliver Behrmann has done there, very impressive, to be quicker than Hulkenberg on his first run on the soft tyres, quicker by nearly 0.3 of a second. A couple of tenths of a second it was from Hulkenberg, but that's pretty good. But now Norris has gone quicker than Piastri by 0.2. So what a big shift we are seeing. We've been wondering a little bit more about McLaren, but now they have suddenly put the lap together. What we haven't seen, of course, yet is Max Verstappen on the soft tyres. We are about to watch Lewis Hamilton on the softs, and this could be quite interesting, couldn't it?
Yeah, Mercedes, as Andrew mentioned earlier, they've gone back to a slightly older version of the car because, big slide there for Lewis Hamilton, just about saved it out of the wall. Yes, they have had a tricky couple of races, let's say. They're bringing, everyone is, as we all know, F1 is a big development race. And strangely this season, a lot of them have brought upgrades that don't work. It's not just Red Bull, they're not alone in that. Ferrari have done the same, Mercedes have done the same, which is why they've reverted back to an old spec to try and understand this car a bit better. But obviously they have had both drivers win a race this year, so it's not all lost for Mercedes, but they're certainly not where they would want to be. I think the big thing for Lewis Hamilton was obviously winning in Silverstone, a perfect send-off as it was for his time with Mercedes. He is absolutely not slowing down, and we talk about age with Fernando Alonso, who's 43. Lewis Hamilton will be 40 by the time in January, so when he starts with Ferrari, and he certainly feels like he is still very young and has everything to go for.
He's not having a happy time on this lap though, Ben, is he? Lots of slide. Doesn't look like he's got much grip at all on these soft tyres.
I agree. He is slipping and sliding. There's a lot of traffic around, although the traffic's been very good at getting out of his way, but they're out of the way in difficult places where sometimes you can't always actually look where you want to be looking. But his pace is better on the second sector, and he's actually very close to Lando Norris on the sector times now. So despite all the traffic being around, and it's, as you say, a bit of slipping and sliding going on, he's obviously pushing hard. This is going to be a decent lap, but is the final sector going to be fast enough to match Lando Norris? We're about to find out. We've got a yellow flag down at sector 1. That shouldn't affect him going over the line. He can keep his foot down, and he does go fastest. He does a 1:45.859, and we've got we've got another bit of contact with the barrier, sadly. Colapinto, he says he's all right, but Franco Colapinto has made contact with the barrier. And it is the left front. Yeah, we hadn't seen that until we got the onboard shot. So left front as opposed to right front with Charles Leclerc, and that is disappointing for the youngster, having his first experience of this Baku racetrack, his second experience of a Formula 1 race weekend. This is not how he would have wanted to get underway, but James Vowles, the team principal, knows that when you've got a youngster in the team like this, mistakes can easily happen.
It's only his second weekend. Here we are going on board with him now.
Yeah, let's have a little look at how this went wrong for him. He turns in to the left-hander. Turn 3, turn 4. The back end swings out. He tries to correct. There's just not the space. This is the track that you get into a bit of a sideways moment, and there's just not the room to run wide. He's into oversteer very early into that, the back end. Let's listen.
Okay, sorry for that, guys.
Yeah, he's apologising straight away, and the young Argentinian, he will be a bit frustrated with himself, but mistakes are so easy to make here.
Indeed, and that's actually a worse crash than Leclerc's because he's hit the rear first. He's done both corners on the left-hand side, so there's although it doesn't look as bad potentially, maybe, you're not approaching that corner as high a speed as Leclerc was in turn 15. To hit both corners, you've got the drive shaft issue, the gearbox potentially there, both sets of suspension. That's going to be, I think Williams will still get the car turned around probably, but that's more work for them than it will be for Ferrari by the looks of it.
Yeah, that is definitely a bit of work to get him out for a second practice session. Let's hope that they can get the car repaired and put back together. And of course, earlier this year there were problems getting the cars fully repaired, but it isn't a full damage. I think they should be able to sort that out. It wasn't a super high speed crash, because of course these corners are not super high speed generally, but very easy to make a mistake. So Franco Colapinto, the driver who is going to be seeking first points for an Argentinian driver since 1982, that long ago, yeah, really. But whether he's going to be able to do that this weekend here, he's done a decent job. I mean, at the moment, he's sitting in 13th place, whereas Alex Albon is down in 15th position. But I wonder if that's going to shift a little bit in the final quarter of an hour or so of this session, as we've got this other red flag that is just bringing cars in, and they get that other car sorted out. Lewis Hamilton currently fastest by 0.168 of a second over Lando Norris, but the McLarens are looking strong. Second and third fastest at this point. Piastri third. Perez is up to fourth place on the soft tyres, but we have not obviously seen Charles Leclerc out on softs, because his car's not going to be out in the rest of this session, and we haven't yet seen Max Verstappen on soft tyres. That's going to be very interesting, because I think he's going to have pretty superb pace looking at what he's done so far. Daniel Ricciardo on soft tyres has come up to 7th, ahead of Oliver Behrman, who's done a great job in 8th, ahead of his teammate Nico Hülkenberg in 9th, both on the softs. Yet to see Carlos Sainz put in a lap on the softs, and George Russell. And then further down the list, as we've just mentioned, we've seen Franco Colapinto put in a decent lap, but unfortunately now crash into the wall. And we're still waiting for the Aston Martins to go out on the soft tyres as well. Down at the back, we've got both Gasly and Ocon, the Alpines. I saw they were saying yesterday that the problems were always going to be a bit of a challenge here at Baku, and Esteban not going out any further in this session, as he has a power unit problem, and they haven't been able to solve it, so they're going to have to wait and see if they get him out for FP2 a little bit later on today. So it's not been a good start to the day for Alpine. Gasly was saying this track is always a bit of a challenge for this current style of car, but there are opportunities at this track. Andrew, in the past we've seen plenty of safety car periods. We actually haven't had a safety car period for quite a few races, have we? Which is unusual, but this track we've had either safety car or virtual safety car every time.
Except the first one.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. I remember being... Oh, Beck wants to say something.
Well, no, do you remember the first race here was really boring?
Terrible.
But it was only boring because the F2 guys went out and they all smashed it. And there were so many accidents and incidents that by the time the F1 drivers went out, they were all super cautious.
Yeah, exactly. And we were all convinced it was going to be a massive red flag. And we were all so surprised that they came through without any crashes, We're just looking back at Colapinto's crash here, by the way, in the background. But, big whack. But he's okay.
But you're right, Ben. Every other race since then at Baku, there has been a safety car, and it's the sort of track where you expect a safety car. As we've just seen with Colapinto and Leclerc, it's a very easy track to make mistakes. There's lots of corners that can catch people out. It's inside, outside, particularly that little section around the castle. It's very, very mistake-prone track. And
if you can get a pit stop when there's a safety car period, you can gain a big bonus, can't you? And so therefore, you may not be the fastest qualifier, you may not be in the front straight away, but if the timing works well for you, you can come into the pits under safety car. You can gain from that.
Absolutely. So all the teams will be very wary of that with their race planning. They're always thinking about safety car windows, as they put it, when they're planning strategy. That's what you often hear them talking about that on the radio. What they're saying then is, basically saying, how are we likely to lose a position or not if there's a safety car, and how do you protect against that possibility? That's going to be even more of a consideration in Baku this weekend. Just on the McLaren situation, to go back to that for a minute, I think one of the things that's been interesting is that there's been a lot of talk about how it's not fair on Piastri. You hear that on social media a lot. They shouldn't be backing Norris. Piastri's had a great season and what have you. We did the podcast yesterday with Jolyon Palmer, and he made a really good point, actually, which I've been considering too. Actually, Norris has been basically the quicker McLaren driver pretty much all year. It's looked a couple of races like Piastri was quicker, but it was more of a function of track position than anything else. So he got ahead in Hungary at the start, for example. and pulled out a gap. But with these Pirelli tyres, it's really hard to keep your tyres in good condition when you're following another car closely, which is why in Hungary, for example, when Piastri was in front, he looked like he was quicker, and then when Norris got in front later, when McLaren were messing around with strategy, got themselves in a bit of a pickle there, then Norris looked quicker. And it was a similar situation in Monza. Yes, Piastri was ahead, but it was because he'd made that move at the start, whereas in qualifying, I think it's something like 13.3 or something to Norris. He is, there's no question he's the quicker McLaren driver, as well as ahead on points. So you can see why they've made that decision. And so yeah, just wanted to make that point.
No, it's a very good point. And yeah, certainly he's been out-qualified by Norris in the last 8. So that is a good point. Lando's rapid over a single lap. But Becky can't get the first lap of a race quite right, because he's never gone from pole position to actually leading the end of the first lap, even though he's had a decent number of pole positions, 5 pole positions in his career so far.
No, his starts have been bad, and that is a real weakness for him, and he's talked about it, he's addressed it. They know that's an issue for them. And yeah, as you say, he isn't leading at the end of that first lap, and that is absolutely crucial. And we know with Charles Leclerc, talking about how many poles he's had in and never converts it, his general conversion rate from pole to win is very poor. And you don't want that to happen to, well, you don't want to happen to any driver, but Lando Norris seems to be going down that road as well. And it is unfortunate, but he has to work on those starts because they are so crucial. You know, you're talking about track position. It is so vital. Less so here, I would say, because this is a proper racing track. We will see really good wheel-to-wheel racing this weekend, I hope. Normally we do. But normally the DRS is so long as well. Yeah. So we will see racing here, or artificial overtaking, depending on how you feel about DRS. But yes, track position normally. Singapore, when we go to Singapore, okay, I agree with Andrew there. Leclerc's probably going to be very quick there. The Ferraris will be very quick there. But Singapore is so crucial for track position. Although, what are we, 9 days out from Singapore, it's due to be raining.
Oh really?
Yes.
So it rains every day in Singapore. It's just hardly ever during the race, isn't it?
Well, not 18 was it?
Yeah,
my goodness.
One with Vettel. Yeah.
Anyway, skipping ahead of Baku, but yes, track position is key, and he has to sort out his starts. That is absolutely vital.
It's an interesting point actually, Beck, because I've done some looking into the Leclerc situation, because his conversion rate is really poor. It's actually not really his fault. Almost every time that he hasn't converted a pole into a win, it's because of something that Ferrari have done, either a strategy mistake, or the engine's blown up, or the car's just not been very good in race trim. And it's more of a reflection of how good he is over one lap that he's got so many poles, compared to actually not being good in racing. Norris is a different situation, you're absolutely right. And what's interesting this year for me is that it's been like a different situation every single time. So Spain, he was on pole. He didn't make a bad start in Spain. He just made a slightly less good start than Verstappen. And then Russell got them both, and then the race worked out the way it did. Then in Hungary, he got beaten off the line by Piastri. That wasn't a great start. Spa, that was just a really bad mistake. He just basically drove off the track on the exit of the first corner because he was being uber cautious about potentially being hit from the inside, because he was right on the outside, and he just misjudged it and got his outside wheels into the gravel trap. Lost 2 or 3 places with that. Again, Spa, it wasn't a Norris problem, it was a McLaren problem, because both McLarens got off the line exactly the same way. It's just that Verstappen's start was faster in the Red Bull, so that was a team calculation on the amount of slip that was on the track that day. And then Monza different again. That was an opportunistic move from Piastri. We were talking about this before we came on air, weren't we, Ben? And I think that it was obviously McLaren have introduced this team orders thing because I think they felt that Piastri had gone a little bit too far with that move. And
it was a brilliant move.
It was a great move, but it felt to me like they were racing to different rules, the two of them. Piastri made that move as if Norris was just anybody.
Norris didn't seem like he felt he did. Watching it didn't feel like he thought he could defend it. He had to let it happen.
Exactly, because he knew if he defended it, it would compromise them both even more. They could potentially crash if he braked late. Whereas Piastri wasn't thinking about that and doing the move on the outside. He was compromising Norris, and that compromising ended up with Leclerc between the two McLarens, and then that led to Leclerc winning the race. Obviously McLaren also.
I do agree. I think Piastri is a natural racer, and it was just so natural to him to go for it, and he did it very cleanly, and it kind of, as you say, it caught Norris out a little bit. Understandably, he's more aware of not trying to get into trouble as well. Fascinating time. We are into the final 8 minutes of this first practice session, and we've got a few more out on the soft tyre now. So we'll just see if we are beginning to see just a few more changes as they're beginning to put together maybe their final fast laps in this session. And Alonso, who I mentioned hadn't really done anything until now, right, he has moved up reasonably well there. He's gone into 5th. Verstappen, meanwhile, is on the fastest first sector, and you're listening to the sound of Max Verstappen's car right now. He's now into the very tight section, turns 8, 9, 10, up through the historic part of Baku. And then as you come out of turn 12, you pick up the speed once again through the curve at turns 13 and 14, down to the corner where Charles Leclerc had the incident earlier, turn 15. Let's just watch him here. He goes right out to the wall, but it's beautifully done. And Verstappen, let's see, as he comes down towards the second, he's on a really flying lap here. He's on potential to take the top spot by nearly half a second from Lewis Hamilton, currently so he's on the soft tyres. He's very fast in the speed traps. As we saw earlier, the Red Bull is quick in a straight line, and that could work well here because you have such a long straight down towards the line here, and we shall see what it's going to be. But as he comes over the line, he goes second fastest, so the final sector was not so quick. It was only a fraction slower. He's a tiny amount slower than Lewis Hamilton, but it does show, I think, that Red Bull are very much in the game here this weekend. Hamilton fastest, Verstappen second, Norris currently third, Sainz is fourth, having done that lap on the softs. Piastri's just gone back out on the soft tyres. Alonso up to 6th, Russell 7th, Perez 8th, Charles Leclerc not doing anything now, of course, but still in 9th place, and Daniel Ricciardo rounding out the top 10. Just having a little bit of a look on board with Alex Albon. Let's just hope that he wasn't doing anything quite as... No, actually, it's interesting. He's gone straight on at the corner that his teammate had a crash earlier, Beck, and he's decided, I'm not even going to try and turn in here. Maybe I've gone in a bit quick.
You almost felt like watching that. You could see the moment in his brain where he thought, no, I'm not going to repeat what my teammate's just done.
So we'll look at Lewis Hamilton here. Oh, there was a bit of muck coming up from a car. I wonder what that was, dust or smoke, and that actually distracted Lewis. It made him brake too late going into the first corner. Let's see who... it's Carlos Sainz. I think he was just on the dirty side of the track. Carlos was keeping out of the way, but it just shows us the dirty side of the track. You can see it actually when Lewis drives off track there. You can see it's still very dusty, can't you, in places offline?
Very dusty, and there's still not a lot of grip, is there? Sort of 55 minutes now with cars on track, a couple of red flags, obviously, but it's not evolving probably as quickly as they would like it to.
No, I agree. I think they're going to need other cars out there and some of the support races to try and clean it all up a bit. Piastri has just done a slightly better lap. He's 5th fastest, but Perez has just gone quicker than him. Sergio Perez has a 1:46.2. Red Bull are 2nd and 5th at the moment. McLaren 3rd and 6th. So there's not much to choose between them, whereas we've got a Mercedes on top. The second Mercedes of Russell. He did a good lap earlier. At the moment, he's down in 8th place. We've got another yellow in sector 1 at the moment, so whether somebody else has run a bit deep, they may have just gone down an escape road. Yes, I think that's likely because we've gone green flag already, so somebody may just have gone down the escape road. As we listen in to Oscar Piastri on this lap at the moment, but he's not putting together a particularly quick lap at this stage. First sector about a second and a half down on the fastest pace so far. George Russell, I think he may have just gone down a little bit deep into turn 1. Yeah, that was the cause of the yellow flag down in the first sector. George did a bit like Hamilton a moment ago, exactly the same really. Braked a bit late into turn 1 and went down the escape road. It's very easy to do the turn, get back onto the track and then rejoin the fun and games. But turn 1 we have seen dramas in the past, particularly between Red Bull teammates, of course. Verstappen and Ricciardo. It was a very classic moment here. Listen to Tsunoda.
My car is bouncing like hell.
Tsunoda complaining his car's bouncing around a lot, and well, that's something that the teams will work on to try and improve. We've had it here in the past when these high downforce levels came back into Formula 1. There was a lot of bouncing here, particularly when Baku was an earlier part of the season. Some drivers, I remember Lewis Hamilton actually complaining about the physical aspect of driving here in Baku when they brought in these high downforce and they were getting all this crashing down into the right. It was really quite painful.
This was the race he got out of the car and said he had the issues with his back.
That's right.
And I feel like we have moved on from the P word. Are we even allowed to say porpoising anymore?
Indeed. It's not part of it anymore,
It's not. Thankfully, they've found a solution to it. But yeah, a couple of years ago when it came in, that first year it was, Lewis Hamilton was not in a good way getting out of that car. Mercedes had huge problems with porpoising. They're probably the worst actually affected, weren't they, by it at the time. And headaches. They were complaining of headaches because their head banging around the whole time within the helmets because of the bouncing of the car.
It's actually a really good, while you're saying that, it's a good onboard shot that we're able to see at the moment with Oscar Piastri. And actually just watching him, you can see the head is still shaking around quite a lot. It does show us that there are some quite bumpy bits. The bits he's in now is smoother, but there are some sections here where they are taking quite a lot of force, but it's, as you say, not nearly as bad as it was with the porpoising that went on in the earlier days of this high downforce. They have managed to sort most of that out. Only a minute and 40 seconds to go in this session. Hamilton is currently faster than Verstappen by a tiny margin. And on the straights, Hamilton has gained more on the straights than Verstappen. That's interesting because Red Bull actually looked as though it had good pace on the straights. But when there's an analysis that's been shown up on our screens, that Hamilton is actually gaining a lot of his time on the straights rather than in the corners, which is quite interesting. Carlos Sainz on a lap as well. He's in fourth.
There's nearly half a second they're saying that he's gaining on the straights, which is a very good. It's great for Mercedes if they really have reversed. As I said, they reverted back to an older spec because the recent upgrades they brought weren't quite working, and they're nearly half a second quicker than Red Bull. That's actually quite surprising. Yeah,
it shows the Red Bull must be quick through the corners then, because they're doing virtually the same overall lap time. Sainz has just set the fastest first sector of anybody. So let's just watch the rest of this lap for Carlos Sainz. Carlos has always been out-qualified at Baku. And of course, having Leclerc as his teammate is part of the problem for that in recent years, because Leclerc's always been so rapid here. Mind you, Leclerc has crashed this morning, and that will put him back a little bit. You need the laps, you need to just keep on going, and so Charles will be a bit disappointed about that. But Sainz on a good first sector. Let's see how the second sector comes up. Not bad. He's actually right on target to match Lewis Hamilton's time. So Lewis Hamilton currently fastest. We're getting into the final seconds of this first practice session, and of course whoever is fastest doesn't always mean they're going to be on pole, but I think we've got a good show that there is going to be a display of different cars that are showing good pace here. And Carlos Sainz is about to come over the line. He's currently in fourth place, and as he comes over the line, actually he doesn't improve in the final two sectors. So for some reason the first sector worked well. Maybe he pushed the tyres too hard. That is something drivers have to be wary of on the softs. If you push the tyres too hard in sector 1, you don't get the grip in sectors 2 and 3. And that's kind of what it looked like a little bit. Perez on a decent lap, but Max Verstappen is on an even better lap as he comes along. He's done the best first sector. Perez is now in the final sector, and he's in the mix. Could be up there with Hamilton. Whether he's going to be quite as far up, but Verstappen potentially could be going faster than everybody here. Right, let's have a look. Sergio Perez coming over the line and goes third. So he's only 0.063 off Hamilton. Verstappen is 0.036. Reverse numbers. That's not very confusing. But Verstappen's on a mega lap. He's on a really good one.
Crikey, he's 7/10 up after the second sector. He's purple in both so far. This is what we've been talking about, isn't it, with Red Bull? You can never discount them, and he is absolutely flying through this lap as he comes through the final corners and onto the final straight and down to the lights, and he is going to cross the line. It's a very long straight.
It is. Let's have a look though as he comes across the line. This is going to be, he has taken the fastest time in free practice 1 by 3/10 in the end, and for Max Verstappen, who has taken victory in the past, but interestingly he's never taken pole position. That's a surprise, isn't it, in Baku, that he's never had pole position. He's had one front row start here, but he's never had the pole position. Well, right now he is the fastest. If he does get pole this weekend, it will be the 23rd ever venue for Max to get a pole position, and actually that would match Sebastian Vettel's record. So we shall see if that happens later on this weekend. But Max has gone fastest. That's a good sign that Red Bull are back on the pace, with Hamilton second, Perez in third. As ever, Sergio always more confident in Baku, and he has gone third fastest. So Red Bull in good shape. We're just having a little replay of Carlos Sainz, who did a very good first sector. Ooh, did he touch the barrier? No, not quite, but he ran a little wide at one stage. Maybe that hurt him a touch on the second sector. This was down into turn 7. He ran a bit I think he maybe just a little touch there with the wall. Having another look at this from an outside view, and I think there was just a light touch against the wall for Carlos. So he wasn't able to improve on 5th in the end, and of course he kicked up a bit more dust. But there we are, he's cleaning the truck up as well. So Verstappen has ended up fastest. 2nd, Lewis Hamilton. 3rd, Sergio Perez. Lando Norris, the major challenger, 4th fastest at the moment. Carlos Sainz 5th, and Oscar Piastri 6th. Fernando Alonso, who wasn't really doing much for quite a lot of that session, has ended up 7th fastest. George Russell, 8th quickest, and then Charles Leclerc, who crashed out 9th fastest ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. Outside the top 10, a brilliant effort by Oliver Behrman, faster than his teammate Nico Hulkenberg, but both Haas cars showing good pace, 11th and 12th, ahead of Lance Stroll in 13th, Valtteri Bottas in 14th, Yuki Tsunoda down in 15th, then the 2 Williams drivers, Franco Colapinto, who had the crash, he's ended up 16th, Alex Albon was only 17th, Pierre Gasly in 18th position, Zhou Guanyu finished in 19th, and Esteban Ocon, who had a power unit problem and didn't really get to do a decent run at all, he ended up down in 20th and last place. In the low-speed corners, interestingly, Verstappen a lot quicker than Hamilton, so there's a real difference in balance, isn't there, between the Red Bull and the Mercedes, between straight line speed and corner speed.
Yeah, that graphic was just telling us 0.77 seconds quicker for Verstappen through the slow speed corners. That's very impressive.
That is a lot, yeah. So they've gone for a slightly different, it looks like they've gone for a slightly different sort of balance on the cars. Mercedes have gone for straight line speed, Red Bull have gone for slow corner speed. Both is working, but Verstappen has ended up faster than Hamilton by 0.3 of a second at the end of this practice session. So we've got second practice coming up in a few hours, and 5 to 2 on air, and we will be there to witness Hamilton.
Yeah, Alonso was fast, double call fast, and then kept pushing sector 1 by the look of it. Yeah.
No surprise.
So a bit of radio from Lewis Hamilton, who has ended up 2nd fastest to Max Verstappen. But as ever, it looks like we've got a good mix. Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, all in the pace. Lots to look forward to over the course of this weekend in Baku. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.